Hello and welcome to Soul in Balance, and in this video we will be going over Venus in Partners 8th house in Synastry and what it means when we have this deeply intense and transformational aspect that really is not for the faint-hearted. Now, first up, I just want to say that I have a plethora of experience with this aspect from my Synastry clients and from also my own personal experiences. So I'm born with Pluto in Libra and my DC is also in Scorpio, and I'm born on an 8th house eclipse. So with the South Node, the Moon and Neptune. And Pluto is also making aspects to literally all my inner planets. So I just want to say that most people that find themselves in like a Venus in the 8th house situation are usually quite Scorpionic, quite Plutonian, and have a lot of 8th house stuff going on most of the time. And, and just to work part and parcel with that, most of my partners and close friends and things like that, their Pluto is on my DC and their Pluto is also squaring my Venus, or maybe my planets are in their 8th house or their planets are in my 8th house. So I just know this aspect really, really well from both sides. So I really do hope that you find this video helpful. Now, first up, we need to think about the 8th house. Like, what is the 8th house of somebody? If our Venus is going into somebody's 8th house. So the 8th house represents, death, rebirth, transformation, being that phoenix, rising from the ashes. It's the taboo, it's occultism, it's spirituality, tarot, astrology, psychic connections. It really does represent our sexual nature, our sexual desires, what we're attracted to when it comes to our sexuality. It also represents deeper commitment. It can also represent enmeshment, codependency. It also represents divorces, taxes, other people's money, abuse, abandonment, betrayal. It's also the house of, psychology and how we pull things apart to understand things in a deeper sense. And it's also what we hide. It's the house of what we consciously hide. And not the 12th house is what we can't see. This is what we consciously suppress in some kind of way. Now, also, I'm going to leave a link in the description for a video on Hades and Persephone. So Hades is the god of the underworld and Persephone is the daughter of Zeus and Demeter. Now, I don't want to go too much into it, but it really is that theme of, like the narcissist and the empath, or the narcissist and the codependent. I do believe that there is some truth to this aspect of this Hades and Persephone, but I have found with most of my clients and even myself, my personal experiences, is that the Venus person, when someone's Venus goes into the 8th house, the Venus person is usually quite Scorpionic within themselves and tend to sort out these more intense relationships, deeper relationships, for some kind of healing of their own. Like usually the Venus person is needing to take their power back from either from family dynamics or whatever it is. So they tend to be attracted to the 8th house type person. Sort out these type of Scorpionic type relationships to bring about that metamorphosis, that transformation, that death and rebirth. So I'm someone who's very much about not putting all the blame on the 8th house person. I do believe both are very aware of the intensity and the draw to that relationship, that very much that obsessive push-pull, and both can be quite manipulating and intense with each other. So first off the bat, I think we need to just not live in the emotional dark ages and blame everything on the 8th house person, that Venus, knows what's going on, and that, we take responsibility for ourselves. And I think that's what one of the major lessons with this aspect is, that the Venus person definitely needs to take responsibility for their choices and take their power back. And usually when we get ourselves in this type of 8th house dynamic, that is what we end up with. But ultimately, the Venus person brings out, or can definitely bring out, the sexual nature and sexual desires of the 8th house person. So the 8th house person is very, very, very attracted to that Venus, very obsessed and addicted to that Venus person, the way they hold themselves, their intensity, the real side of them, the truth of them, the psychology. So I would say that the Venus person is probably the 8th house person's sexual ideal. So, and I do believe that they have this, beautiful sexual connection, sexual chemistry. It's a really great aspect to explore sexuality and have great sexual experiences and just be really open with each other and non-judgmental and just feeling that you can be yourself and not have somebody judge you for your desires or what you want or your body or things like that. It's just a very beautiful, comforting, experimental and accepting placement to sexually explore if this is what you're wanting to do. So, Venus really does bring out the sexual nature of the 8th house person, and also the 8th house person can also stimulate that Venus person, to go into more of their sexuality or, their sexual needs and things like that. So yeah, the Venus person is definitely the 8th house person's sexual ideal. Now, the Venus person also opens up the 8th house person in an emotional and psychological way as well. So we definitely find here that the Venus person and their experiences in life tend to sometimes be a lot like the 8th house person's experiences. And, when the Venus person is comfortable talking about their situations and their trauma, it kind of inspires the 8th house person to do the same, because we tend to hide what's in our 8th house. But when Venus is kind of saying, hey, it's okay, and beautifying, some of the difficult situations that we do get into, and it really does inspire that 8th house person to either start healing, to start bringing it up, or deeply trigger them. So, if we think about it, like the 8th house is like our trauma, our vulnerability, our weirdness, our dark, our ugly. It's like what we kind of hide. So, this can be, deeply healing, deeply traumatic, or deeply transformational, and it's usually all, because the Venus person can also bring up, the house person's deepest insecurities, because, the 8th house person and the Venus person are so smitten and so deeply bonded that then there's this fear that you're going to lose each other. And this becomes like a self-fulfilling prophecy, because, you start controlling or manipulating or, playing games or, things like that, just to control the relationship, because you don't want to lose the relationship. And then you end up losing. It's like sand, when you try and hold on to sand tighter, it falls through your fingers. So this is definitely a relationship where we have to learn to just hold it and trust that, that we are loved and supported. Because I feel like when it comes to the 8th house, there's a lot of fear. There's a lot of trauma that we're going to be abandoned. And, we just have to start filtering out those negative voices, like get rid of the mind propaganda and trust that you are loved. Now, we also want to, if we're going to navigate this relationship, and make it a long-term thing, because a lot of these relationships can, come in hot and heavy and then get really destructive and then end and then come back together and then end and then come back together. So if we want to kind of make it like a long-lasting relationship, we really need to understand each other's Pluto and what's going on there, and has each partner kind of done healing around this area, how it's all affected, and what are the correlating themes, what is the correlating themes with that person's Pluto, like, what sign does it rule, what house is it in, and things like that. We really need to understand how the two Plutos are operating with each other. This is definitely important. And understanding the sides of the like addiction and repulsion. This is very much like, partners that like deeply want to be like inside of each other, they want to be so close, and then next minute they can be so repulsed from each other, or it's just like a love hate or a push pull, and this is constant. It will be constant throughout the relationship. I don't think it ever really subsides, but I think that will depend on your own 8th house and Pluto stuff. It will depend how scorpionic you are in general, but it's just a very deep and very intensely bonded position. And this is where we can get like trauma bonding, when we go through difficult situations with somebody, and then we work it out, and then we come back together again, we have this deeper bond. And then with this aspect, it just keeps coming. We keep digging up more stuff, more trauma comes up, and then we have issues, and then we come back together, and this just keeps going and going and going and going. And this can create trauma bonding, or it can create healing, or things like that. So we just need to understand that this is a highly deep bonded place, and it's a very psychic place. I remember in one of my relationships, I was at work and my partner had the day off, and next minute I tasted like bourbon, like whiskey in my mouth, and I messaged my partner. I said, "Are you drinking?" He's like, "Yeah, I just bought a 6-pack of something," or whatever it was, the bourbon whiskey. And I'm just like, oh my God, I just tasted it in my mouth. So we're deeply psychically connected to our partner with this aspect. And it, like I said before, it definitely brings up a lot of trauma. But what is really beautiful is that we're just so connected to each other. Like, we just know each other's mind. We can read each other with everything, but we know when they're not okay. We know when they're wearing a mask for public to make, to look like everything's perfect. Like, we can read them so well. There's nothing can be hidden with this aspect. This is not also an aspect where it's just like usually like a fling. This is usually an aspect where it's just like straight away, it's deep, bonded, and serious. Whether the relationship lasts or not is completely different, but most of the time, not always. I'm not going to say that, flings and one night stands and things don't happen with this aspect, but usually majority, people just come together really quickly, and it's really serious, very full on. And that's usually because we have a lot of past life situations together. We've been together, through many lifetimes and things like that. Also, like I said before, we have periods of separation. So, we come together, it's very intense, it's very hot, heavy, and then, trauma gets brought up and we act from a really primal place, and then we hurt each other, and then we need to go away, this push-pull, this repulsion. But then there's that need to come back together again. And, other astrologers have mentioned as well, people seem to think that this is like a twin flame thing, because there's just a lot of crap out on the internet, and especially in the spiritual communities. And this is just a very, we're all soulmates. We're all deeply connected to each other. Every single person, our friends, our family, our neighbors, everyone that comes into our life, we have a lesson to learn and helps us grow. But we find with these types of connections, with Plutonian connections, with Neptunian connections, that they really do help us along. They accelerate that healing, maybe faster than other relationships. So we have soul contracts with each other, that if we're going off track a little bit, we're going to come together and we're going to get ourselves back on track. But this is definitely a placement where we have to learn the lesson. Like, a lot of people get into, 8th house relationships and they're more traumatized, and they tend to perpetuate this victim mentality instead of getting the lesson and what they need to heal. It's not really about that other person. It's about you and what you need to heal within yourself. And it's usually about taking your power back, not listening to fear, not believing that you're going to be abandoned and things like that. There's a lot of lessons here. There really is. And taking responsibility for yourself, and loving yourself as you are and not needing anybody. So there's just a lot of lessons here realistically, but just keep in mind also there is a lot of heavy manipulating and controlling. And this is from a very unconscious place. Like, yes, the 8th house person does do this, but I also feel like if the Venus person is highly scorpionic, they're doing it too. You know, like, so, you know, this can be withholding sex. It can be, you know, the silent treatment, or making you jealous with other people, or, you know, things like that. There's, you know, there's a lot of manipulation tactics, or putting you down, or affecting your self-esteem. So, and I find both people do this. Like, I don't think it's just the 8th house person, but that's just been, you know, my experiences. But the thing is here, we need to understand that, you know, this person can't fill our void. Like, yes, they make us feel like our trauma and our difficult situations are cared for and loved, but it's also triggering those aspects as well. And we need to understand that we need to fill our voids, not have somebody else fill our voids. And yeah, we just need to understand that it's just so deeply bonding. Like, it really, really is. Like, it's very deeply bonding. It's very traumatic. And, you know, we hurt each other in such a way, and we are so close in such a way. It's a relationship that we'll never forget, you know? Now, just to add some extra fun to this video, I just thought maybe it might be a good idea that you watch The Addams Family, because the relationship is definitely a lot like Morticia and Gomez Addams. You know, somewhere mixed between like Hades and Persephone, and yeah, Morticia and Gomez Addams. You'll kind of see that, you know, the correlating themes here of that dark passion and, you know, love and vulnerability. But I also want to mention too that a lot of people that get into these relationships, they majority of the time say that it brought out a darker side to them that they didn't recognize, or maybe they've suppressed. I just want to say that this definitely does happen, and I think it's a beautiful thing, you know, like to own who you really are. Like, a lot of people talk about, you know, it brought out all this jealousy and revenge and, you know, all this hatred and anger that they'd probably been storing in their body for such a long time. And if you listen to Jordan Peters, he talks a lot about owning your monster and integrating it into your life, because it's so important that we take our power back, you know. And just understand, like, Pluto, the 8th house, Scorpio, is like the power pack of any birth chart. So, you know, it's important that we have this and we integrate this, you know, and to also be mindful that this placement is heavily karmic. Heavily karmic. So whatever you put out, you will get back. Like, in these types of relationships, you know, you're definitely on the Pluto prepaid plan. Like, you know, like, as soon as you, okay, just say you're in separation, or you've separated from this person, and, you know, you hope that they don't find anyone else, you won't find anyone else. You know, if you wish bad upon them, that will happen to you. If you do something awful to them, you will feel it. Like, you'll feel that pain, you know, like, it's heavily karmic. So it's important that we, you know, and we don't hold on to resentment, like, because this will just rot the body. It's like poisoning the body. So, and this usually happens when people don't heal from the relationship, you know, like, this relationship is all about healing and transformation. It's not about staying wounded and being in victim mentality and being in the lower vibrations of Scorpio, which is jealousy, resentment, abuse and things like that. Like, this is the low vibration Scorpio stuff. We need to be, you know, transcending that. And some of the illnesses that come up during with the 8th house stuff is, you know, especially for women, it can be like urine infections from holding on to anger and resentment towards your partner, or, you know, like vascular problems from holding on to resentment. And this can be vascular problems anywhere throughout the body. It can even be like hemorrhoids, or, you know, like spider veins and, you know, varicose veins and things like that, just holding on to that anger, like you will poison your body. So it's very important that we, you know, we let go of that. We really let go of any resentment, and we look for the blessings and transform that pain and take our power back. So I really can't say that enough. And we need to understand that this is, you know, heavily fated relationship. It's a soul contract where we're pretty much just like, all right, cool. If you're kind of going off track in your life and I am going off track, we'll come together and we'll help each other, you know, get back on track or learn whatever lessons we need to learn. Or it's like, hey, we didn't get things right last relationship, so let's come back and do it again. So it's heavily fated, heavily karmic. So we need to understand that. And we kind of need to see it as like they're an angel in disguise, you know, like we learn from trauma or something traumatic or chaos. We don't really learn from love, peace, and harmony. Like the major changes in our lives, if we think about it, is from something traumatic. It's not from, you know, things being easy, you know, and not to say that we don't learn when we're loved and supported and trusted, because that's really beautiful. That really helps us a lot in life and, you know, with our relationships. But what puts a fire under your ass and helps you really transform is something that is deeply traumatic, and that is what this relationship can bring up. So it's important that we don't stay stuck in victim consciousness and, you know, stay broken. That was not what this relationship was designed to be. And yeah, just understand that, you know, this is a love-hate relationship, and, you know, we can feel like we're, you know, part of us is dying when we're in this relationship because it's just so intense, like that I can't live without you, I can't live with you, you know, it's just so, and it just feels like the relationships very much linger on for, you know, some substantial amount of time as well. So that's quite normal. I just want to say too that I think initially that the house person was not the Venus's type. I think the Venus, in most cases that I've seen, the Venus person just kind of got to know the 8th house person, or there was just something about them. It wasn't necessarily the Venus's ideal. It was just this undercurrent that drew them in, you know. So I always kind of noticed that about this aspect as well. Now, I just want to say too is that I do believe that the Venus person can bring money and wealth to the 8th house person, or the 8th house person can spend a lot of money or lose money because of the Venus person. So we need to understand that, you know, the 8th house definitely represents other people's money. So, you know, we can see a couple that, you know, that makes money together, or Venus just brings in this good luck for the 8th house person to make money, or, you know, things like, there's a lot to do with money here. And I also want to say too is that it can be a really awful placement when it comes to unrequited love. And this does happen because, you know, just say, for example, the Venus person's all in and the 8th house person, maybe they're substance abusing or whatever it is, and they're not emotionally available. And then we have this Venus person who's deeply, deeply, deeply bonded to somebody who's not really present. And this is very, 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 very traumatic. And, you know, it's very, very hard. It's very hard to leave anyway, let alone when it's like an unrequited love situation. So, you know, the best thing for that Venus person to do in those type of situations is just to hold it lightly, or just let it go and just trust that you are loved. Because I usually find with anything with the 8th house, when we buy into the fear and when we tell ourselves we're not loved, we're going to get it, because it's, you know, it's one of those placements where, you know, it's heavily karmic. Whatever we believe, whatever the fear is, that's what we see. So yeah, I don't know, maybe I need to go into that like a little bit more in another video, but, you know, just be aware that if it is an unrequited love situation or one-sided, oh my God, it's deeply traumatic for either the house person or the Venus person. But all in all, this relationship, you know, is, you know, deeply bonded. It will hurt you. It will make you feel so close to someone like you've never felt before. it will trigger you, it will transform you, and make you a better person or a worse person. But all that depends on you and what you learn and what you take away from this relationship. It's about letting the old you die, that old way that you were operating, and integrating a better version of you. And we find here that like a lot of people stay wounded, and they move on to other 8th house relationships, still trying to get the lesson. And that's okay. Like if you're heavily 8th house scorpionic and Plutonian, that's okay. Like it's a life lesson for you to get these lessons. But it's really important, all in all, with this relationship, that you get the lesson, and you get the lessons of taking your power back, owning who you are, and not buying into fear, and just holding on to things lightly, and just filling your own voids. That is like the major lessons here for this relationship. So I hope this was helpful, guys, and I will see you soon. Bye.